right, brothers and sisters, that was Heru, with a nice creative explanation of some of the things that I've just explained, but it's basically the fact that we're in this condition of oppression and how many of us respond to that differently in ways that continue to reinforce, our oppression. Notice that none of those three men actually tried to get up and get the boot off of their neck. But one of the things that I want to emphasize here is the last line, which says, I hope you believe me like you believe in the universalism of whiteness. And the whole point of this, is that we have to emphasize, that when we say the universalism of whiteness, we're talking about European culture. If I mention democracy, development, and globalization, these are political, economic, and cultural systems, or ways of thinking, ways of looking at the world, okay? And so one of the reasons why we've been unable to find a fully liberated agenda to some degree is based upon our inability to come out of the universalism of whiteness. We've been given ideas, that we have been told are universal rather than particular to European people. And in that context, we have failed to particularize ourselves, our own agenda, our own modalities, our own ways of thinking. So we're unable to think in ways that serve our best interests. And so the primary context in which this takes place is the realm of culture. And so what we're going to do next now is go into defining what culture actually is, because many of us have a very deficient idea of what culture is. We reduce it. We have a reductive idea of what culture is. So let's define it, then explain how it is actually reduced and the implications of reducing culture to what we reduce it to. All right. So first of all, taken from Mama Marimba Annie's book, she begins, the book is entitled Yorugo, Great and Illustrious Book by a Great and Illustrious Elder Freedom Fighter in our community, Kings and Queens. Yorugo, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior. She begins by quoting from Baba Wade Nobles, the psychologist, saying, Wade Nobles defines culture as a process which gives people a general design for living and patterns for interpreting reality. Its aspects, he says, are ideology, ethos, and worldview. Its factors are ontology, cosmology, and axiology. And its manifestations consist of behaviors, values, and attitudes. We're going to go forward and just explain ontology, cosmology, and axiology, as well as look at certain behaviors and attitudes, which are the result of culture. So, ontology. The branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. And ontology is basically looking at the nature of the self, the understanding of the nature of the self and the nature of the self, not just on the individual, but essentially on the collective level. How one defines themselves, how people define themselves and their social relationships based upon the understanding of the self, okay? Then we have cosmology, which is the understanding of the nature of the universe and our relationship with the universe, how the universe comes into being, how we are brought into being as a result of our being a part of the universe, and therefore how we relate, what is our role within that universal order based upon that understanding. And then there's axiology. Axiology is essentially the result of the former two, Our understanding of our nature of being, our understanding of the nature of being of the universe develops a sense of value, where we place our values, our relationship with that universe develops our set of values and our principles. And so axiology is really the study of what people value the most, What are the key valuable principles, ideals, material realities, within among a people. And all of these things make up a culture, All of these things define a mentality and therefore define a behavior pattern or patterns of behavior, right? Mama Rimba goes on to break down some of the key functions, of culture as it affects the life of a people. Culture, she says, acts to unify and to order experience so its members perceive organization, consistency, and system. In this respect, it provides a worldview that offers up orienting conceptions of reality. In other words, culture orients our minds in particular ways. It orients our perception to focus on particular things, to understand certain signs and symbols in particular ways and respond to them in particular ways. Yeah. It gives people group identification as it builds on shared historical experience, creating a sense of collective cultural identity. Just want to emphasize the fact that history and culture are synergistic in the sense of history is a key component in the development of a culture, and a culture is a key component in how people produce and develop their own history. All right. And the fact of identity. So when we're looking at a liberation in that sense, yeah, liberation of a people is always based upon the identity of the people. Yeah, there is no liberation fight that does not first identify who the liberation is supposed to serve. Yes, that's a key question right there. And so one of the things that we see today is the development of confusion, yeah, in what African identity is, which means that if we don't have a clear idea of what our identity is, we can't define our goals properly and what our liberation fight is, or even if there is a liberation fight at all for that matter. 3, it tells its members what to do, thereby creating a voice of prescriptive authority to its members. Culture represents values, Culture represents values which they themselves have created together out of shared experiences as a systematic set of ideas and a single coherent statement. 4, culture provides the basis for commitment, priority, and choice, thereby imparting direction to group development and behavior. Indeed, it acts to limit the parameters of change and to pattern the behavior of its members. In this way, culture helps to initiate and authorize its own creation. Don't worry if you never got all of that. I'm going to come back to explaining some of it in a second, okay, as we move forward. 5, culture provides for the creation of shared symbols and meanings. It is therefore the primary creative force of collective consciousness, and it is that which makes it possible to construct a national consciousness. This is a very simple one, but one that we probably underestimate the value of. You see, in this society, yeah, if we see, for example, we're living in Britain, UK, when it comes to October and we start to see a Christmas tree in the supermarket, we have an understanding of what that means. We know how to respond to that symbol. Yes, and in a sense, to a great degree, oppression relies upon the oppressor getting the oppressed to respond to their symbols rather than their own symbols. In other words, the symbols of the oppressive group rather than the symbols of ourselves. Okay? And finally, for all the above reasons, it impacts on the definition of group interests and is, she says, potentially political. And I'm going to humbly, I have confidence that Mama Marimba Annie will understand what I'm about to do. But I'm going to humbly revise the use of the word potentially and say always, always. Culture is always political. There is no such thing as an apolitical culture. There is no such thing as a culture that isn't, there is no such thing as an acultural politic, and the only question is whether we are conscious of the political implications of the culture we have adopted or are impacted by. That is the only question.